Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the latest Urban Living webinar. Today, we are looking at a really hot topic, artificial intelligence and Web3 and what they might mean for real estate. My name's George Sell. I'm editor of the Living division here at International Hospitality Media, and we are a publisher of B2B websites for the hospitality and real estate sectors, and we are also events organizers. Today's webinar is going to last an hour. We'd like to make it very interactive, so if you have any questions, do submit them using the Q&A or the chat function in Zoom. We'll send a recording to everybody who has registered via email, and right at the end of the session, we're going to leave it open for a couple of minutes because my colleagues who are running the show behind the scenes are going to be posting quite a lot of information in the chat. So if you need to take any info from there, we'll leave the session open for a couple of minutes at 3 o'clock. So this webinar series is sponsored by Abode Worldwide, and we're just going to watch a short video to find out some more about them. Okay, so thanks to Abode Worldwide for sponsoring. If you'd like to find out more and get in touch with them, you can see some contact details in the chat. So it kind of escaped your notice that AI is a bit of a buzzword at the moment. There's an awful lot about it, both in the real estate industry and beyond. And just putting up a couple of slides here of screen grabs from our websites and from others, just to show some of the topics that we might be talking about today, from building management software, which uses a lot of data, to a former real estate analyst who's helped to build an AI tool to replace himself. And apparently his clients are now using it to find properties to buy. And if we look at the next slide, again, some really interesting uses of AI, including potentially accelerating the decarbonisation of real estate. But you know, there's some cautionary tales there. There's an article there about how AI will not remedy all our real estate woes. So I think the message maybe there is there's a bit of balance to be had. We're going to try something a bit new here. We're going to ask you in the audience a couple of questions about where you might be in your AI journey. So we've got 3 questions there, which we'd like you to answer. Have you incorporated an element of AI or artificial technology in your business? If yes, has it made your company more efficient? And has the adoption of AI resulted in a reduction in your company's workforce? So if you'd like to answer those, we will get around and we'll discuss the results of this poll a little bit later on in the session. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to ask our panelists to introduce themselves. We've got a great panel here today. And all 4 of them are coming at the subject of AI from a slightly different angle, a different specialism. So we've got a really good overview of the subject. I'll ask them to introduce themselves as we see them on the screen from left to right. So first of all, Ben from Askporter, good afternoon to you. Ben, I think you're on mute.
Off to a good start. My name is Ben Waldron. I am BD manager for Askporter, and Askporter, we do really front-end AI-driven communication that really sort of bridges in the built environment, that bridges the gap between human and computer. So I speak to everyone in the PRS and especially the SRS sector on a daily basis, big housing associations, and I sort of hear quite a lot about what is sort of being asked for, at least needed, in terms of a front-end AI. And so I'm really keen to sort of answer and delve into some of the troubles, and certainly be on the coal face with clients to see what they and sort of explain what they want. So be good to talk.
Excellent, thanks, Ben. And Natan next. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me today. So I'm Natan Lempert. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Built AI. In terms of my background, I used to be a real estate private equity investor and also an investment banker, and left 3 years ago to set up Built AI. What we're doing is that we're helping investment professionals and anyone that is in the real estate industry to make a better investment investment decisions using data science and AI. So we have a couple of products. One, what we denominate as automated financial modeling, and also data insights that can help our clients to make better decisions.
Thanks, Natan. And next is Milos. Welcome to you.
Hello, my name is Milos Halecka. I'm working for MiddleCap, which is a real estate developer operating in the UK, Germany, and Central Europe. And I cover technologies and innovations within our group, coming from the technology industry, working for IT companies my whole life before moving into real estate. So I've got a IT technology point of view on everything we will discuss today.
Thank you, Milos. And finally, James, good afternoon to you, or good morning, I should say, to you, as you're over there in Canada.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Nice to see you all. So I'm the Chief Product Officer for Virtuall, which is a company that helps turn other companies into more sustainable, but also more profitable entities using technology. We've got a number of different products to help us do that. A key one in the hospitality and real estate sector is a premium virtual tour product called Explore, which we've worked on for quite a long time now, and work with a number of big hotel groups, people like Hyatt and other such like. And before that, my background is web all the way, going back to '94. So I was an early CTO at some of London's big digital agencies like Dare. And then I founded Agency Mobile in 2007, which was Apple's first European iPhone developer. So we helped pioneer the mobile app and work with a lot of real estate companies then. And that's me.
Excellent. Thank you, James. Right. So I want to kick off by asking you each in turn. I want to kind of assess the state of play in the real estate industry, really, and how far along it is in its AI adoption journey. And as all of you are looking at different facets of the topic, you might all have slightly different answers, but I'd be intrigued to find out. Natan, would you like to kick off with that one?
Absolutely. So we speak with a lot of clients ranging from big institutional investors, brokers, small operating partners, developers. So we get a good feeling of what's the state of play right now. What has happened is that historically, a lot of these players have been pitched ideas in the AI space and tools. And unfortunately, the industry was not ready at that point in time. So a lot of these people are actually quite dubious about engaging in new tools and what is the actual impact of AI. However, what you're starting to see is that a lot of the decision makers have been reading a lot. If they go to the Sunday Times or the Wall Street Journal, they're starting to hear a lot about things like ChatGPT and AI, and are becoming more curious. So they're engaging with their juniors and telling them, like, maybe this is actually something that we should start considering more seriously. In addition, we're starting to see large private equity funds such as Blackstone, among others, to hire data scientists and people that have a specialization in AI. Recently, also JLL launched their own LLM that was you might have seen in a webinar, and this has triggered a lot of people's interest again. And making them more open into engaging with this type of technologies.
Thank you, Natan. Milos, from a developer's point of view, and you guys came to my attention because one of you, the office building you developed in London, won an award for the smartest building in the world, I believe, which is quite an accolade. So what role does AI play in the development process, and how far along is the development community in adopting AI?
Well, there are many ways how we can potentially utilize AI. And I think it's important to distinguish between the hype and the marketing, which is flowing around the market at the moment, and the practical uses of the technology as it is at this stage. So I think it's important to remind that this whole hype started not that far away from now. It was November, I think 30th last year, when the ChatGPT was basically put to the market. So it's not even a year when we live in this AI hype, and it's because the way how these conversational models work, they are really engaging and they get lots of interest. But there is also AI which is not that visible, and it's now used, I would say, much more in industries like ours. And it's basically the most important part is in the operations of the buildings, because basically buildings, if they are smart, they generate lots of data. So you can apply lots of algorithms to optimize the operation of the building. So I would divide the AI discussion into two parts. And first should be generative AI, which is now the star of the show. But there is this, let's call it the workhorse AI, which can do real things at this moment. And here we utilize the algorithm for optimizing the operations of the building. But still, as I mentioned at the beginning, I came to real estate industry from IT industry, and I was really surprised about I would say the pace of technologies being implemented in this industry. So I think the whole industry still has a long way to go when it tries to implement AI, because lots of players are still in a stage where they are not even able to implement them because they face much more, I would say, basic challenges regarding the technology.
Yeah. I like that phrase, workhorse AI. And Ben, presumably you guys are in the workhorse AI side of things in the sectors that you serve. But how receptive do you find companies in your kind of client set to AI, and how far along?
Yeah, I think like Milo touched on a really good point, is that you know, back end AI can be deployed quite, you know, with good results behind the curtains, but front end AI, for a bit, because it's client facing, it's got to be spot on, right? Because there's all these sort of connotations of, or what it might tell the customer to do something, you know, unthinkable. So, you know, well, I mean, I speak to, you know, PBSAs, social housing associations. They are the interest is, especially in housing associations, because they have so tight budgets and they're on scale, right? We're talking tens of thousands of you know, units, and they have to do so much with so little budget that you know, having something that can literally take away those repetitive tasks and free up huge resources is a must. But on the same side of the coin is that, you know, there's that risk element, and we're kind of and you know, we're not short of doing meetings, but that's sort of, where do we take it from there? And I think that's where it differs when, you know, when we talk about sort of front end AI compared to back end. It's got to be spot on. So yeah, there's certainly some trepidation in the market right across the board from my experience.
Okay, thanks, Ben. James, you've obviously got a lot of technology experience, and you mentioned that most of your clients are in the hotel and hospitality space. Does that mean they've initially been more receptive to new technologies than other areas of real estate, or is that just happens to be where the sector that you focused on?
Yeah, no, that happens to be the sector that certainly my other co-founders have come from. So it made a good point to start there. But I think we're in danger, like most industries adopting new tech, of going for shiny new object syndrome, which we're certainly seeing at the moment. You know, you can't go a day on LinkedIn without seeing an article about something generative AI. which is great, and it's how all these sort of inflection curves start. But our point always with new technology that's so noisy that comes along is let's step back a bit and go, well, hang on a minute, before you look at the tech, what are you trying to do? And I think it's really important to reinforce that question, especially in real estate. You know, there's a lot of core problems that need solving through technology that aren't as sexy a requirement for AI, but they're not being addressed yet, exactly what Milos said. And I think that's back to, okay, let's look at potentially how this new technology could come in alongside other technologies to solve a problem, but let's really validate that problem first before wasting time and money looking at something that may or may not be relevant to your specific use case.
Yeah, thanks, James. Natan, you mentioned that you know, there's a lot of hype flying around, there's a lot of stuff in the media, and it can be quite bewildering. So for companies who are at the start of AI implementation, how do they go about kind of identifying what it is they need to do and selecting the right platforms? And what are the risks of maybe making wrong choices in this respect?
No, absolutely. One of the things that we've been seeing is that some of these institutions have embarked on this journey by themselves. So hiring internal teams and trying to develop this technology. And what ends up happening is that not only do they make a lot of mistakes because they are not in the business of innovating and doing this type of tech, but when finally they create a breakthrough moment and they say, oh, Eureka, we have done something useful, they realize that they're maybe 3 or 4 years behind because what they have developed is completely outdated. So what we tell these companies is to actually partner up with people that have made these mistakes, that are experts in the industry, to increase their development, right? The other part of your question is what is actually relevant for them. This is a very important question because, as you said, there's a lot of noise. So what is the actual application, and how should they be, dealing with what should they be doing AI for? So we could talk about some of the applications where we see a huge potential and where people are inclining, and that's the inability to access internal data and make use of their internal data. So a lot of these real estate firms have collected a substantial amount of information throughout their time, right? They see deals, they see stuff, but they don't have the ability to question and get insights from this information. So we're seeing a lot of people bringing LLM and different types of technology for people to make use of this internal data. So it's a cheesy thing to say, but data is the new oil. They don't understand how valuable the information that they have is, and how this information can actually provide them with a competitive advantage in a market which is extremely competitive right now, which is the real estate space. So that's some of the applications that we're seeing.
Okay, thanks, Natan. Milos, in terms of actually designing and constructing new assets, what's the role of AI there? Has it become involved in the design process yet, or is that still very much based around human input, or is there a kind of synthesis of the two now?
Well, the design process is complex, so I wouldn't say that we can have one answer to that question. But I mean, the most obvious idea which can come to our minds is to use generative AI for designing the buildings, right? Which is not that easy as it sounds. But yes, you can generate a nice idea for a building using DALL-E or any other generative AI tool. And I think I've seen even trainings for architects how to design prompts for these generative AI tools to deliver designs they aim for. This is not completely new thing. I mean, few years in the past, I've seen a presentation from Zaha Hadid architects where they presented their own internal tool, which was used for designing the fit outs or the layouts of the floor plates for huge buildings, because it's not that easy. You have lots of constraints and so on. And this is the tedious task which is really ideal for AI, because it can work with tens of thousands of options, and then come up with, let's say, tens or let's say 100 of them, and then present it to a human being who can decide which one of them is good or not. So definitely we see some ideas even here, but it's still the creativity will be always human, at least in foreseeable future. Then there are some ideas of using AI in the construction process. Again, since the construction process is the most, I would say, old school brick and mortar thing in the whole process, it's really hard. But we see applications like trying to optimize the project management based on previous data. So yes, that's basically it. But the most useful part of the whole design process, where we can utilize the AI, is modeling the energy consumption and the performance of the building, because here basically the modeling relies on data which come from previous projects. And here I see the most important part for using AI at this moment in real estate development. So we have lots of structured data, we have lots of models, and then we can compare them with what we want to achieve. Still, there is one huge challenge which I think we will face in the future, because one thing is to model the building, but then when it comes to the real operation, then the data usually are not that nice as we expected. But that's the way how we will train the model for the next project. So I believe in the operational part, this will be the best case for using AI in the development process. And maybe I can touch really quickly also the part where you try to find the best investment for your next project. So selecting the projects and so on. This is also another part where we investigate how to use it. Definitely, this won't replace, as the article you showed at the beginning, this won't replace the human in the process, but it can make the decision much easier when it will support the human by selecting the right data to make the final decision.
Yeah, thanks, Milos. Natan, Milos raises an interesting point there, the role of AI in helping investors, building owners, and operators achieve their ESG and net zero carbon goals. Can you elaborate a bit about that and how that informs the investment decision-making process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I will quote before talking about ESG is a McKinsey study that was done recently, where they estimated that AI is going to increase the global productivity by at least 70%. And when they just took management consultants, when they implemented AI, they were able to complete 25% of the task was completed quicker, and 40% of the tasks were completed at a higher quality. So why am I talking about this study and how is it related? When you're making this type of decisions, especially on the ESG, understanding modeling costs, understanding what's the best ROI on your portfolio, having these tools at hand can actually expedite and make, and increase the decarbonization by having these tools in place. Just as an example, if I'm an investor and I have a portfolio of like 1,000 assets, which are the assets that I should be focusing on first? Which are the ones that are going to have the biggest bang for my buck? So meaning that it's going to increase the ESG credentials with a lower amount of investments. These are all tasks that can be done, but could be done much more efficiently and much quicker to accelerate the decarbonization.
Okay, thanks, Natan. Let's change tack slightly and talk about how AI can help companies offer better customer service and communication. Ben, this is kind of your area. Do you want to talk a bit about that and how you're incorporating AI into your service?
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, Askporter, we're about, everyone interacts within the built environment, whether it's, a resident at home, or a member of public in a shopping mall, or even a contractor that's going out to service an HVAC system. At some point, they will need to interact with what is effectively data that is behind on a system. So, you know, whether it's just sort of phoning up and saying, well, this is broken, or when was the last service on this done, or when, there's always a question at some point. And the problem with sort of UX UI platforms is you need a login, you need to know how to use it, you need to, whereas, you know, natural language and AI communication is sort of the way forward, because everyone can talk in a normal, everyone can text, everyone can, you know, take a photo on their phone. And so that kind of the ability to sort of bridge the gap front end and have access to information at your fingertips is freeing up a huge amount of resources. And obviously if we can free up those resources, you know, it effectively means that we can provide better service, and that includes, you know, say shopping malls, and, you know, there's a whole vast array of within how we interact within the built environment.
So that presumably is an interaction from the building manager to the end user's mobile device. Is that the most typical way this works?
It can be anyone, depending on what. And this is where we see as a company that AI being really, really useful is because ultimately AI is just a search and find, right? It's pulling a data point, it's pushing a data point from a sort of block toilet in a public place to say a resident sat at home. So rather than having to go through someone to be able to raise that work order, to be able to you know, update a certain field within, you know, we met with I shan't name the name, but a large housing association that had spent, you know, hundreds of thousands doing asset register verification with people on the ground, whereas actually they could have just done an outbound, you know, survey, you know, how many bedrooms do you have, how many bathrooms, whatever. So that's just a simple push and pull kind of, you know, stuff that the AI can deliver. So you know, being able to sort of have that access to that data is going to free up huge amounts of time to be able to sort of deliver a better service. So we're all about trying to focus on the more value add conversations. You know, it's not about replacing a job. It's about then having a better conversation. So your property manager is having a better conversation with them because they're not having to deal with the mundane and the repetitive.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Natan, did you want to come in on that point?
Yes, I just wanted to add to Ben's point. So there's one of the things that there's going to be a lot of innovation it's what's called Auto GPT. So Auto GPT is what is basically sequences. So right now, when you go to GPT, you ask a question and there's an answer. But what if actually there could be a sequences of events that could take place? So in the example that just Ben made about the toilet, the AI could identify, yes, there's a toilet. Why don't I just go and investigate through Google what are the best providers to you know, to fix a toilet, then find the providers, send an email to these 5 providers asking them to get a quote, and get the best quote, and then send it back to me, and then also inform the client about the feedback. So it becomes like what they call agents that are working for you, and you can put them on different types of work streams to, again, make you much more efficient and optimize all of these processes. And this is where the industry is going to be going ahead, where we have these autonomous agents doing all of these work streams and tasks for us.
Milos, I see you've got your hand raised there.
You're muted.
So I just wanted to add to what Nathan said regarding the study. I think it's important to understand, and I will cite, I think it was Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, when they were introducing their Copilot. So this is like the helping hand for human. And basically he said, this is not about the AI versus people regarding the jobs. This is about people with AI and people not using the AI. So I think that we need to understand that AI is the helping hand in our job and not something which will replace us. And even if there will be part of jobs which will be probably replaced, they will be allocated to jobs which do not currently even exist. So all the fears about replacing people in our industry and all the others are really, we don't have to be afraid that much. We just need to be sure that we can utilize AI in our daily work as much as we can in order to deliver the results. So
the best analogy for that is that I like to make is when you go to a Starbucks and you order a coffee, you get a coffee from a barista, right? That he's preparing your coffee. But what you don't see in the background is that he's using tools like an automatic grinder, a automatic like cappuccino machine that makes it much more efficient. But the barista is always going to be there. The real estate professional is always going to be there. Real estate is a people's business, and it's never going to be replaced by a machine. It's just going to be help us, and it's going to enhance our productivity.
Very interesting. James, you wanted to come in on the, was it the customer?
Yeah, well, all of it. It's very interesting. I think AI is seen as a bit of a risk to people who need to open their minds a bit. You know, you see these conversations come up regularly, and it really is a question of, if you look into the future, you know, things will change. There's no getting away from that. Technology is moving at such a quick pace now that, you know, there will be changes in human labor, but as Milos said, those jobs will change and people will adapt and move into different skills, but they'll be underpinned by repetitive tasks done by machines, which are just better at doing them. And if you look at, for example, a lot of our clients in the hospitality industry, there's still very much a sense of protectionism, which is, we'll take the less exciting, but probably better technology solution because it keeps our sales team in place. Now, that sort of thinking, it has really got to change, because that's inefficient. And it's also, it's not helping customers ultimately, because if you can get quickly to your query solved very fast with a one-on-one interface as a potential guest or a potential buyer, your perception of that brand is obviously going to go up, and your interaction with that brand is going to be much more positive. So I think we now need to help organizations start to think, again, very user-centric. Let's step it down again and go, well, how can we help the user to achieve what they need to do with us better using this new technology? And that may well mean that the organization has to change from the top down.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. James, I want to stick with you for a minute. Obviously, your product is predominantly focused on hospitality at the moment, but if we expand from that, how can AI, virtual reality in particular, how is that going to transform property marketing and sales?
Well, I think drastically. You know, if we talk about sales and marketing, especially, which is sort of almost seen as a bit of a hygiene task in many sectors, it's actually vital. And of course, it can be done so much more efficiently using some of these tools. You know, prospecting much easier, much quicker, much more accurate with the data being fed into the prospecting process, for example. It's not a very sexy use of AI, but it's actually a very good one. And the other thing, which as we move into a more sort of AR, XR mindset of virtual reality, extended reality, is again, everyone's going for this shiny new object, and we're sort of pulling people back a bit and saying, well, hang on a minute, the market isn't there yet, the product isn't there yet. If you look at a lot of web3, and I hate to use that term because I don't necessarily agree with it, but you know, we've gone back a stage as far as, you know, even the graphic experience on web 3D is very basic still. It's very compatible because you can use it anywhere, but it's still a very basic brand experience where most users are used to playing PlayStation or seeing a Netflix show with amazing motion graphics. So there's a perception gap there and a connection gap there that we need to keep it all in mind. So we just built a very beautiful avatar to answer some FAQs, for example, that was fully AI generated, AI voice, that was custom made for us because we wanted it to sound like a brand. Or the personality of the brand. The face of the persona was very carefully designed to be approachable, to hit the right feel we wanted. So there was a lot of layers going into that. It wasn't just let's pick an avatar off the shelf and stick it up on the web. So I think brand is very important, and it's something that needs to be brought in alongside the technology developments. There's no point suddenly sticking you know, a virtual sales room that 1% of your audience can use. Having said that, if you're selling luxury properties to the Middle East and you're based in London, there's an amazing experience you can build using some of the new technology, especially in virtual reality. And we think the Apple Vision 1 will be the breakthrough there, because the quality of the experience will be just amazing, and you'll be able to make a buying decision even from 10,000 miles away. So they're the sort of things, real use cases that need to be looked at. Facilities management, absolutely. Leading on from what the guys were saying earlier on, the That needs to be built in when you build the properties, though, because you need to build in all your sensors. You need to get all of that wired in from day one so that you have the data to then use the way you want later on. But I mean, it's a huge area. I could talk all afternoon just about that, but I won't.
Well, it's interesting your point about the some of the sort of metaverse products, and there was a lot of excitement around last year about virtual real estate. I went to MIPIM last year and I sat in on a session about it, and they had the head of real estate for one of the biggest retailers in France speaking on a panel, and it sounded really interesting what he was saying, and then they showed some graphics of what he was actually talking about, and I was taken back to my ZX81. It was so basic, I couldn't believe it. I just about stopped myself from laughing out loud when I saw it. I thought, this really can't be the next big thing. That has got to improve a fair bit.
It really has. And the trouble is, a lot of the decision makers are they get very excited by these things. So someone will go in and pitch you've got to be on Web3, and here's this thing you need to be in, virtual meetings, whatever. And they almost forget that we have a brand and we have all these values that we need to represent that still are just as applicable in any new web area of the web, or any new area of technology. And exactly the same with mobile apps in the old days. You don't just build an app, build something that actually supports what you're already doing.
Before generative AI came along as the poster child for new tech, everybody was talking about blockchain, which seems to have disappeared from the headlines now. But what are the potential uses of blockchain in real estate, and where are we at with that? James, do you want to pick up on that one, and then we can go to some of the other guys?
Well, I like blockchain. It's not the most interesting sort of piece of new tech to many people. It's like, oh, a ledger, interesting. But actually, because it is a distributed ledger and the capabilities that offers you, I think it's very useful for example, the traditional real estate chain, the buying and selling of a consumer property. All of that can be absolutely revolutionized by making everything available on the blockchain. And there's a number of different solutions out there. I can't think of any off the top of my head in terms of names, but that's a very inefficient process historically, where people were emailing was about the height of the technology. Before that, they were literally sending envelopes with bits of paper in it right into the mid 2000s. So that's an area where that sort of technology is brilliant. Anything around provenance or proof or security, just records, smart data management, I think it's still got its place. It works alongside other tech. It's not something, again, that should just be used in isolation. So a properly validated problem that might be solved with blockchain is probably the question we need to ask in any situation where you might think that's relevant. Yeah.
Natan, is blockchain relevant in your offer?
Not relevant, but it's something that I was I'm quite a fan. I'm a fan of all sorts of technology. I think one of the obvious applications the useful thing about a blockchain is that you can track all of the historical transactions that have taken place. So there's as James was saying, there's a ledger, and one of the obvious applications is ownership, right? So if you go to different emerging markets around the world, they're not as sophisticated as the UK, where you have a land registry. So it's very hard to track down the ownership data of buildings and just keep a clear record. So if you go to, India or Latin America and some of these emerging markets, so there's that blockchain technology could be a good application of ownership and land registry data for some of these countries.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Milos, did you want to come in on that point?
Yeah, I mean, I agree what was just said. Maybe one thing, we've seen the blockchain hype before the pandemics. Then the pandemics hit, and people had other problems than blockchain in real estate. So I think the activity has gone down. We investigated a few ways how to utilize it, especially in tokenization of assets, which I still believe it's a really good use of that technology, because it provides the proof of ownership, as Nathan said. But I think it will face the same issue as, let's say, a land register on blockchain, because this goes far behind the industry. It goes to how the government works. It goes to the processes which have been here for at least tens or even hundreds of years, and this is really difficult to change. So as a niche in real estate, I believe at least the tokenization will be reborn again. Otherwise, it will be, I think, the implementation will be even longer than metaverse, which is actually nice to look at.
Yeah. Okay. Right. We have got some questions coming in from the audience, but I've just got a couple more questions that I want to go around to you guys first before we get onto those. The first is, what are the potential downsides to increased AI adoption in the real estate sector? I'm going to start with you, Milos, because you were very bullish about how positive it is. But what can you foresee any potential downsides?
Well, I think that we can probably see a couple of projects which will be expensive and they won't bring the value which they promised at the beginning, because as it was said, usually real estate is not full of people who are really keen on technologies, so the marketing can prevail. But otherwise, I don't think that, in real estate industry, we don't have to expect some huge issues. There are AI related issues which go beyond real estate, and this is the transparency and the ethics of AI. But I think that this is not really the number one case in real estate. So I'm generally positive, but I'm not saying this will be without issues.
Yeah. Okay. James, what's your take on that?
I think, yeah, there are some risks. I think, almost reversing my point a little bit earlier on, I think we do have to be careful of the people. I think there's a communication challenge on behalf of the whole industry to reassure people that these are opportunities rather than risks. There's always a bit of risk. Certain jobs or certain whole sectors may well be affected, and I think it'd be churlish to ignore that. But I think if that conversation is always had but you can retrain or you can change the scope of your job to become something that works with that and potentially makes your job easier and more interesting, then that sort of goes some way to solving it. I'm fairly positive. I think it's very early days in what are quite sort of old school businesses in general, but there's a lot of change happening. We're speaking at Reset Travel in November in London about the blue sky of the future across travel, for example. And a lot of this, what we're talking about today, dovetails into that. And I certainly think this is the cities of the future, the smart cities of the future, which there will certainly be many of. They will have adopted all of these things by default, and it won't be a talking point. It will just be a hygiene factor. Oh, that building's got this data collection and it connects with facilities. And by the way, our sales management system plugs into it. And the whole seamless sort of living, working, traveling, existing could be very much enhanced by that. I think let's look at it from a positive perspective.
Thanks, James. And Natan, I see you've got your hand raised there.
So I don't know if anyone has heard the story, but there was a lawyer that actually used AI to build a court case. And then when you go to court, you have to cite different precedent cases that have happened. So James versus Natan and whatever, just making stuff up. So he was lazy, he used AI, he went to court, building his defense. And the judge says, listen, these cases didn't exist. So the AI hallucinated. And in order to create the actual argument, he came up with some cases that were completely fake. So what is the lesson here is when people are over-reliant and are actually not auditing, the AI can actually literally hallucinate and lead you to things that are actually incorrect and make you believe. The best joke is, and I'll stop talking too much, is where hopefully it will make people laugh. There was a gentleman that went and said, hey, ChatGPT, 1 + 1 = 3. Is that correct? And then ChatGPT said, no, well, 1 + 1 = 2. And then he said, no, but my wife just said that 1 + 1 is equal to 3, and my wife is always correct. Then ChatGPT says, actually, you're correct. Your wife is always right. 1 + 1 is equal to 3. So the thing is always trying to please you to give you the right answers, which could actually be extremely dangerous in how you're doing things.
Ben, hallucinating AI could maybe be a dangerous thing when you're interfacing with customers. Are there any drawbacks to the technology that you could see?
Yeah, I mean, I heard a sort of similar story to about, I can't remember, it was a journalist, and there was a leak. It was very, very vague, but it was a sort of a leak that wasn't than someone that was on a register or shouldn't have been, and it was suddenly accessed to by a lot of people. And I think, this is it's the nature of the beast, right? Because it's learning, and it's also taking from the internet. So I think one thing always to keep in mind is data security. Ring fence whatever you do, and make sure that everything is always internal, so that we're not sort of pushing anything out. Because I've heard some literally from clients some scary stories where the customer service agent has been just using ChatGPT to write replies to residents, and it goes out, and then all of a sudden that their names and data is suddenly out there in the ether. So it can really, if not applied right, it can certainly raise some potential risks there.
Yeah, right. Let's fast forward 10 years. Where is the real estate industry going to be in its adoption of AI? What's the industry going to look like, and how is AI going to have contributed to that evolution? Milos, let's start with you.
Well, I strongly believe that in 10 years' time, we will have smart buildings operated by AI in a real way. So we are on our way there. This will be definitely right. Otherwise, I think we will have much more transparency and flexibility in the market. It also depends on the country, because there are countries which rely on their non-transparent markets, and this will be really hard to change. But at least on the operational part, we will be there. The AI will run the most advanced buildings. Not all, but the most advanced will be run by the proper AI.
Yeah. James, how about you?
Yes, I agree. I think we're going to see it everywhere in 10 years' time, in all parts of the chain. I don't think search will be the primary discovery tool for any users either. So the whole interface will change. I think everyone will have some sort of virtual device where they'll be able to, interact with buildings, interact with their surroundings much more naturally. It won't be some embarrassing sort of Christmas present that you never use. And just, it will become unobtrusive. It will become part of our life. Just like when the old iPhone came out and everyone's like, I'm not walking around with that. I'm not using that. Who would say that now? It's with us all the time, even when we go for a restroom break. So I think positive future, much more efficient industry, and opportunity for everyone, actually.
So it will be so commonplace we won't be having webinars about AI anymore. It will be,
no. But to tell everyone how clever we were 10 years ago when we're retired.
Make the most of today, folks. Ben, how about you?
I mean, I think as our panelists have already sort of touched on, really, I don't think there's much more. It will be natural. It will be, there'll be huge restructuring, and jobs that won't exist previously. So it's like anything. When the Industrial Revolution happened, there's such a huge change, and we go through these changes, and they are. Just the shiftings of power and workforce. So,
and finally, Natan, how about you?
Yeah, so everyone has covered the majority of the points, but I just want to give you a couple of numbers just to put things in perspective and where the future is going to take us. So ChatGPT 3.5 was trained on 570 terabytes of text data, which is approximately 95 trillion words. Trillion, right? Our brain has 86 billion neurons, which it means that ChatGPT was trained on 1,000 times more data. And the universe has 2 trillion galaxies. So ChatGPT was trained on 47.5 times more words than the number of galaxies in the universe. Just to put it in perspective, the amount of investment that has been poured into AI this year alone has increased by 600%. So everything that we have seen in the past couple of years is the result of what we're seeing right now. So if the investment has gone up by 600%, just brace yourselves to see how this technology is going to be evolving in the next coming years. It's going to be transformational. It's going to be one of these technologies that is going to, these eureka moment like the industrial revolution that is going to change how we operate on our day-to-day life.
Wow, that is some food for thought. And on a slightly more prosaic note, we're going to go to some questions from the audience now. First question from Zara Bridle. Thanks for your question, Zara. She's asked, what role does AI play in driving resident engagement in build to rent? Ben, that's probably up your street, is it?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, very much so. I think you know, for build to rent is becoming more and more, you know, like hotels. The residents are demanding more, you know, service 24 hours a day, and obviously this is you know, costing a lot, and so, you know, it's just a natural progression that certainly front end AI is going to be able to serve those needs and questions. And you know, we've seen it also in PBSA, that, you know, they'll sort of, people want at 2 o'clock in the morning want to know, you know, how do I fix this, or where's the best pizza place that's open at this time? You know, all these kind of weird and wonderful questions that sort of help, that they will, you know, help deliver a better service is how that might. And I definitely see build to rent is going to be the forefront on that one.
And on a related note, a question from Lisa Summers is a two-part question. She says, could you provide concrete examples supported by data of how AI solutions have enhanced resident satisfaction in the living sectors? And the second part of that is, how close are we to implementing AI-powered receptionists in operational buildings? Do you want to have a crack at that, Ben, and then we can see if anyone else...
I'll say, I mean, I can't. The first part, unfortunately, I don't think I could. But the second part, I think it's really important to note that we're only as good as the data in, and that's not the LLMs. That is the context, right? So, yeah, and this is where sort of, you know, open ChatGPT and things like that sort of can't really serve as a business, because you need context. You need the previous communications. You need to know who are you talking to, what's the, you know, whatever. Those contexts allow you then to have the reception, the concierge, because otherwise all you're doing is just typing into Google effectively, really, and there's a big disparity between the two. So I think we are very close to AI powered receptionists, but it all depends on your system and data behind it. And Natan said, oh, you know, data is the new oil, so that's going to make or break.
James, did you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I agree totally. I mean, this is going to become normalized. You know, we're building a lot of AI stuff behind the scenes that will magically appear just to save our time, you know, on repetitive tasks around filming, for example, and also around visualization of spaces. That's another thing we haven't really talked about. But, you know, but the actual concept, and we worked with Microsoft in Portugal about 10 years ago on a project like this, but it was just too early. But all the basic functionality was there then. It's just taken this long for the market to be ready for it. But now, you know, if you license, for example, Chat GPT on the or the OpenAI API, you can build a virtual receptionist that's fully privacy driven with all the data in the right place pretty quickly. So I think it's more about how willing are building owners and property owners and operators to get stuck in, because, you know, that could be there now in premium properties anywhere.
Fascinating. Natan, one last point from you, and then we're going to have a look at our poll results.
Sure. It's very important for here to understand what Ben was saying, which is the data that is being fed into these machines, because just the best example is that ChatGPT was trained with all of the data in the internet, and there's a lot of news data. So when the nature of news is very democratic, like it could be inclined to either left or right. So when people ask the opinion of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, he was very pro Joe Biden. So going back to the receptionist example, it depends on how you train the data, right? So what do you feed into that receptionist, and how do you train what is going to be happening is also, it gives you the results of if this is useful for you or not.
Yeah, I mean, the best pizza is subjective, right? There isn't a correct answer, which is a whole other conversation. Okay, we're going to hopefully have a look at our poll results now. Let's see what we make of those. Okay, so nearly half of the people on the webinar have incorporated an element of AI. 75% of those who have said it's made their company more efficient, and around 2/3 said the adoption of AI didn't result in reducing the workforce. Okay, that's interesting. Anybody want to comment on that? That's
I think that's very encouraging, and pretty surprising, actually. That's a lot. I mean, I don't know how specific the audience is, but that seems to be a very switched on result, and I think it makes sense, actually. The second two make sense. What do you think, guys?
Yeah, does anyone else want to comment on those numbers?
I mean, unless the reduction of workforce, you really got to have, huge scales, huge teams. So in order for it, to really actually, reducing, we're talking about on your, small to medium size, workforces. It's really about reallocation of time, and so that would kind of make sense, and that you can concentrate on value adds and growing the business rather than running the business, rather than trying to, make redundancies.
Excellent. Oh, that's yeah, fascinating, interesting stuff there. Thanks to you guys all for your contributions today. I think that was a really interesting discussion. We are just going to show a couple of slides before we finish. Our next Urban Living webinar is on October the 25th, in 2 weeks' time, and that's about investment into the sector. And you should be able to see a link to register for that one in the chat. We've got quite a few events coming up, both online and face-to-face. These are a couple of face-to-face events. An Urban Living Insights half-day event about hotels and hospitality, also on the 25th of October. That's a busy day for me. And next week, we have got a new event launching in London, the Short-Term Rentals Summit. This is going to be a cracker. And for our viewers today, there is a 50% discount to buy tickets for that, which you can see in the chat. It's going to be a really good event. We've got speakers coming from all around the world for that one. Be good to see some of you there. If you're interested in working with us at IHM, whether it's on our online offers or face-to-face events, please do get in touch with one of my colleagues, Jordan or Piers, whose details are on the screen and also in the chat. And finally, thanks for joining us today. Thanks to Ben, to Natan, to Milos, and to James for their input. Thanks to Abode Worldwide for sponsoring the session. Their info is in the chat if you want to get in touch with them. Thanks to you all for watching, and enjoy the rest of your days. Thanks very much.